All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We've got one more fleeting segment with our featured guest for the evening, Tom Baugh, author, columnist, and we're talking about his most recent column entitled New York Who. It can be found at our website, thepoliticalcesspool.org, among other places. And, Tom, something you mentioned earlier in the program, last segment, was the differences that exist between what Keith Alexander would call red state America and blue state America. You know, I agree politically, culturally, with everything going on in Arizona. You would certainly not see laws like that passed in places like New York. The southern states obviously have a very different culture, a culture that I think is far superior to that of our neighbors to the north, and yet we're treated with so much disdain. You mentioned we're always there to have their back, to use your wording, yet, people don't understand. I don't know how many people realize that Nashville, Tennessee last week was underwater. I'm talking about Katrina-like devastation. It was the greatest flood in the history of the state of Tennessee. The Grand Ole Opry, Opryland Mall, all of downtown. I'm not saying water got in these buildings. I'm saying these buildings were underwater. If you had been sitting on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry, you would have drowned. 6-8 feet tall water. The whole city, if you were in a helicopter, was underwater. There were no ground. There were no roads. It was underwater completely, one of the greatest natural disasters in the history of Tennessee. And you heard about it, but it didn't nearly make the kind of headlines that the guy who drove up to Broadway with a van full of firecrackers did. And, Tom, that's one of the things you're talking about. And there's so many other aspects to deal with here, one of which is, you mentioned the draft during the break. How does that correlate and coincide?
Well, imagine that this idea of turning your back on New York and D.C. caught on, and that young men stopped throwing themselves into the breach for a group of people who have studiously destroyed this country and every institution of value in it. This is our country. It's not theirs. And if we can't succeed, we can effectively succeed them out by choosing to not serve in the military to protect them. And essentially tell the world, whatever happens to them, we're going to turn our back. We're not saying anybody's going to attack them. We're not going to say we're going to put together any kind of plot. But if they won't behave themselves and they run out there in the world and they continue exercising financial warfare on everyone and us, we're just going to turn our back on them. Well, if that idea catches on, and I think it might, as more people get stricken by the theft that they've caused, as more people turn their back on New York and D.C. and refuse to serve for them, they're going to start a draft. And that means that your child is going to get taken from you and forced to fight for them. Well, a lot of people get excited about gun control, and they talk about what are they going to do when they come to take my guns. What I really want to ask you is, what are you going to do when they come to take your child? Forget the gun. What are you going to do when they come to take your kid and put him in a uniform to fight and die and get maimed for those thieves in New York City? What are you going to do? I think at that point, that's the tipping point. Because
I certainly hope so. We've had drafts before, and as unpopular as they were, it didn't really upset the power structure to the point of collapse. But you do see this, and it will happen. And as they draft our children and the young men of this, or I guess women now too, if you want to get into that. But as they draft, the more they take from us, the more they will hate us. You saw people from all over the country, especially the South, go up to New York in the wake of 9/11. How many New Yorkers came down to Nashville last week, Tom?
Right, exactly. Well, a month ago, when I was coming back from speaking at the 2010 Liberty Forum in New Hampshire, I drove back through New York, and one of the reasons I drove up there to New Hampshire from Georgia is because I didn't want to have to deal with the TSA, so I thought I'd just drive my SUV the whole way. Well, on the way back, Shotgun, who's my videographer, he and I decided we're going to drive through South Manhattan, and we're driving around the city, and they're just partying, and it's Sunday night. It's apparently a 24/7 party there. And why not? They're spending all the money that we've sent there in our retirement funds and in failed banks and schemes designed to fail that they've bet the other way. We've sent them all this money, so they're just having this great party. And we're driving through South Manhattan, And we're thinking, if this entire island was bulldozed from tonight, then tomorrow the world would be a better place. Because it occurred to me that everybody on that island is either part of the financial structure, part of the media structure, or someone hoping that some of those crumbs are going to fall onto their plate. So I want to throw out to anybody in New York listening to this, I think it'd be a good idea to start moving now, because if people in this country do decide to turn their back, it's sort of like the story of Lot, right? That you've got to turn your back on them. You've got to walk away. And if you're a good person in New York, walk away. Leave them. Don't look back. Don't turn into that pillar of salt.
Sodom and Gomorrah, absolutely. I know where you're going with this.
And so you're right. Did they come to Nashville to help? Did they even run more than just a few obligatory stories? No, because all that matters to them is their 24/7 party at the expense of all of us and everybody else in the world.
And, Tom, you made, again, I want to go back to this because it's such an astute observation. The attacks that this country suffered, whether they were real or imagined, whether the government had a hand in them, we won't debate that right now. But it was Washington, D.C. and New York, Manhattan. The heart and soul of this country was not attacked, and there's a reason for it. And the reason is because, there are still good parts of America. There are still pockets of this country with redeeming moral qualities. And the values and the corruption that persist in places like Manhattan and D.C. Really have nothing to do with America at all. It is indeed like a separate nation already.
That's right. Now, that's not to say there's not going to be attacks, because if you were over in Pakistan and you see some kid from Iowa who's, shooting at you, or you find out that the guy who was running the RPV that just dropped a bomb on your house or shot a missile at your house was doing it out of New Mexico, you might think, okay, New Mexico is a valid target. But outside of this war, which was done to defend them, there would be no reason for anybody to attack New Mexico. There would be no reason for anybody to attack Memphis or Atlanta. We haven't done anything to anybody. But those people have.
Well, they have, Tom, and for the sake of the people who are still part of the fabric of America, people who still resemble that which the American experiment dreamed to be, what recourse do we have?
If we recognize that this country has been taken away from us, it's been taken out of our hands. We're supposed to run this. It's been taken away from us, and the authority has been used under the color of law to destroy our lives and destroy our economic opportunity. If you make that first decision that, yes, this country has been taken away and it's a deliberate effort to destroy us, then you are open to what it takes to individually empower yourself. And one of those things is just simply say, I'm not going to go over there and fight for them. Let them suffer what comes. Because if we're not willing to take care of this rabid dog, then maybe there'll be someone out there who will do it for us.